Long cinematic version. The city lights of Gary, Indiana glowed softly in the night. Small houses. Hard-working families. Dreams struggling to survive. And inside one tiny house, a little boy stood quietly in the corner. That boy's name was Michael Jackson. At that moment, he was not famous. Not a legend. Not the king of pop. Backhand index pointing right, just a child. The beginning of pressure. Michael grew up in a strict household. Very strict. His father, Joe Jackson, demanded perfection. Mistakes were not accepted. Fear became part of daily life. The discovery of talent. But Michael had something special. Something impossible to ignore. Backhand index pointing right, a voice unlike anyone else. Even as a child, his talent shocked people. The Jackson 5. Soon, Michael and his brothers formed a music group. Backhand index pointing right, the Jackson 5. At first, they performed in small places. Tiny clubs. Local talent shows. But Michael stood out immediately. The child star. He was only a little boy. But when he stepped on stage, backhand index pointing right, the audience couldn't look away. The energy. The dancing. The voice. It felt magical. The hidden pain. But behind the smiles, Michael was suffering. While other children played outside, backhand index pointing right, Michael rehearsed for hours. While others enjoyed childhood, backhand index pointing right, Michael worked like an adult. The fear of failure. His father pushed him constantly. Sometimes with anger. Sometimes with fear. Michael became terrified of making mistakes. Because mistakes had consequences. The rise begins. Then suddenly, everything changed. The Jackson 5 became famous. Very famous. Crowds screamed everywhere they went. People fainted at concerts. And little Michael became the center of attention. The world watches him. Television shows. Music tours. Interviews. The world fell in love with him. But inside, backhand index pointing right, Michael still felt lonely. The lost childhood. Years later, Michael admitted something heartbreaking. Backhand index pointing right, I never really had a childhood. Those words stayed with millions of people. Because behind the fame was a child who never got to be a child. The obsession with perfection. As Michael grew older, his desire for perfection became extreme. Every dance move. Every song. Every performance. Backhand index pointing right had to be perfect. The dream gets bigger. Michael no longer wanted success. Backhand index pointing right, he wanted immortality. He wanted people to remember him forever. The final scene of part 1. Late one night, young Michael stood alone backstage after a performance. Sweating. Tired. Silent. The crowd outside still screamed his name. But Michael stared into the mirror quietly. And whispered. Backhand index pointing right, one day, I will become the biggest star in the world. And in that silent moment, backhand index pointing right, history quietly began changing forever. Long cinematic version. Fame changed everything. But it did not make Michael happy. The crowds grew larger. The music became bigger. The world screamed his name louder every year. Yet inside, backhand index pointing right, Michael still felt empty. Leaving childhood behind. By the time most teenagers were discovering life, Michael had already spent years under stage lights. Tours. Interviews. Pressure. Backhand index pointing right, endless pressure. He smiled in front of cameras. But behind closed doors, he often felt exhausted. The need to become more. As Michael got older, he wanted something different. Not just success. Backhand index pointing right greatness. He didn't want to simply be famous. He wanted to create something the world had never seen before. Breaking away. Michael slowly started becoming independent from the Jackson 5. He wanted creative control. He wanted his own sound. His own image. His own identity. Many people doubted him. Backhand index pointing right, he's just a child star. Backhand index pointing right, his fame won't last. But Michael had a vision no one else could see. The hard work nobody saw. While others rested, Michael practiced. Again. And again. And again. Every dance move had to be perfect. Every note had to feel emotional. Every performance had to feel magical. Backhand index pointing right perfection became an obsession. The birth of a new Michael. Then came a moment that changed music history forever. Backhand index pointing right off the wall. Michael's solo album shocked the industry. The music felt fresh. Different. Alive. People suddenly realized something important. Backhand index pointing right Michael Jackson was not just talented. Backhand index pointing right he was extraordinary. But Michael wanted more. Success was not enough for him. He wanted something impossible. Backhand index pointing right the greatest album ever made. The creation of Thriller. Michael worked harder than ever before. Long studio nights. Painful rehearsals. Constant pressure. He pushed himself beyond exhaustion. Because inside his mind, he could already hear history being made. The release. Then finally, Backhand index pointing right Thriller was released. And the world exploded. Global madness. People everywhere became obsessed. The songs. The dance moves. The style. The voice. Backhand index pointing right Michael Jackson became unstoppable. The moonwalk. Then came the moment nobody would ever forget. During a live performance, Michael moved backward while appearing to walk forward. Backhand index pointing right the moonwalk. The audience lost their minds. Television exploded with reactions. The world had never seen anything like it before. The rise of the king. At that moment, Michael Jackson became more than a singer. Backhand index pointing right he became a global phenomenon. Children copied him. Adults admired him. Artists studied him. Everywhere on earth, people knew his name. The price of fame. But fame came with a cost. The bigger Michael became. Backhand index pointing right the lonelier he felt. He could not walk outside normally. Crowds chased him everywhere. People screamed. Cried. Fainted. Michael's life stopped feeling human. The fear of being alone. Despite having millions of fans, Michael often felt isolated. Because fame gave him attention. Backhand index pointing right but not peace. The desire to escape reality. As pressure increased, Michael slowly began escaping into fantasy. Dream worlds. Imagination. Neverland. Because inside him, backhand index pointing right the lonely child still existed. The dangerous obsession. Michael became obsessed with perfection. Every performance had to be bigger than the last. Every album had to break records. Every moment had to feel legendary. And that pressure slowly began destroying him. The final scene of part 2. One night, after a massive concert, Michael stood completely alone backstage. Sweat covering his face. The crowd outside screaming endlessly. Yet inside the dressing room, There was only silence. Michael looked into the mirror quietly. Then whispered to himself. Backhand index pointing right, the world loves Michael Jackson. A long pause. Backhand index pointing right, but does anyone love me? And for the first time. Backhand index pointing right, the king of pop looked truly lonely. Long cinematic version. The applause never stopped. Crowds screamed his name everywhere. Airports. Hotels. Concerts. Backhand index pointing right, Michael. Michael. To the world. He looked untouchable. A legend. A superstar. The king of pop. But behind the fame. Backhand index pointing right, Michael Jackson was becoming deeply lonely. The price of being famous. Michael could no longer live a normal life. Simple things became impossible. Walking outside. Shopping. Eating in peace. Even opening a window attracted crowds. The world watching him. Every move he made became news. Every word. Every outfit. Every expression. The media followed him constantly. Cameras everywhere. Questions everywhere. Pressure everywhere. The child still inside him. Despite being one of the most famous people alive. Michael still carried the heart of the lonely child he once was. The child who missed birthdays. The child who missed school. The child who never had a normal childhood. The creation of Neverland. Michael dreamed of building a place where he could escape reality. A magical place. A world filled with wonder. Backhand index pointing right, Neverland Ranch. There were rides. Animals. Movie theaters. Gardens. It looked like a dream. But for Michael. Backhand index pointing right, it was an attempt to rebuild the childhood he lost. The smile that hid pain. In public. Michael smiled constantly. Soft voice. Gentle personality. But people close to him noticed something. Backhand index pointing right, his sadness never fully disappeared. The fear of trust. The more famous Michael became, the harder it became to trust people. Were they real friends? Or just people wanting money and fame? Michael often felt surrounded by people. Backhand index pointing right, but emotionally alone. The physical changes. As years passed, Michael's appearance began changing. The media talked about it non-stop. Rumors spread everywhere. People judged him constantly. But very few understood the emotional pressure he lived under every single day. The obsession with perfection grows. Michael pushed himself harder and harder. Long rehearsals. Extreme performances. Constant pressure to stay number one. Because deep inside. Backhand index pointing right, he feared losing love from the world. The dangerous reality of fame. Fame gave Michael millions of fans. But it also trapped him inside a life where privacy disappeared completely. Every mistake became global news. Every rumor became a headline. The emotional exhaustion. Late at night. After concerts. Michael often sat alone for hours. Silent. Thinking. Asking himself questions nobody else heard. Backhand index pointing right, who am I without the stage? Backhand index pointing right, would people still love me if I stopped performing? The pressure becomes heavier. Then came more problems. Criticism. Accusations. Public attacks. The world that once celebrated him. Backhand index pointing right slowly became divided about him. The hurt inside him. Michael tried to stay strong. But the emotional damage was growing. Every headline hurt him deeply. Every rumor affected him. Because despite all the fame, backhand index pointing right, Michael was extremely sensitive inside. The search for peace. He searched for happiness everywhere. Through music. Through creativity. Through fantasy. But peace always seemed temporary. The final scene of Part 3. One quiet night inside Neverland. Michael walked alone through the empty amusement park. The rides were silent. The lights dim. The world asleep. He stopped beside a carousel. Looking at the empty horses turning slowly. And softly whispered. Backhand index pointing right, I gave the world magic. His voice almost breaking. Backhand index pointing right, but sometimes. I feel invisible. The wind moved through the empty park. And for a moment. Backhand index pointing right, the king of pop looked like a lonely little boy again. Long cinematic version. Fame once felt like a dream. Now. It felt like a cage. The weight of being Michael Jackson. Everywhere Michael went. People watched him. Not just fans. The media. Photographers. Critics. Backhand index pointing right, the entire world. There was no escape. A life without privacy. Simple moments became impossible. Going outside meant chaos. Crowds screaming. Cameras flashing. Security running. Michael could never truly relax. Backhand index pointing right, he lived inside constant attention. The pressure to stay perfect. The world expected Michael to be extraordinary every second of his life. Every performance had to be legendary. Every album had to break records. Every appearance had to feel magical. And slowly. Backhand index pointing right, perfection became a prison. The fear of failure. Michael feared disappointing people. Because deep inside. Backhand index pointing right, he still wanted love and acceptance. The applause of millions gave him temporary happiness. But silence terrified him. The media storm. Then things became darker. Rumors spread everywhere. Newspapers published shocking stories. Television channels talked about him constantly. Some stories were true. Some were false. But all of them affected Michael deeply. The emotional damage. Michael became more isolated. More anxious. More fragile emotionally. People close to him noticed the change. Backhand index pointing right, he smiled less. Backhand index pointing right, he trusted fewer people. Backhand index pointing right, he slept less at night. The escape through music. Music became his only safe place. Inside the studio. Michael felt alive again. No cameras. No headlines. Backhand index pointing right, just music. The dangerous exhaustion. But even there. He pushed himself too hard. Hours of rehearsals. Perfecting every movement. Repeating scenes again and again. Michael demanded perfection from himself constantly. Even when his body begged for rest. The loneliness gets worse. Despite having fame, money, and millions of fans. Michael often sat alone. Completely alone. Because fame surrounded him with people. Backhand index pointing right, but not always with real connection. The child inside him never healed. The older Michael became, the more obvious it was. Backhand index pointing right, the lonely child inside him never disappeared. He still searched for comfort. Still searched for peace. Still searched for happiness. The world changes around him. As new artists appeared. The music industry changed. But Michael refused to stop dreaming bigger. He wanted another legendary comeback. Another moment to shock the world. The desire to return. Deep inside. Michael wanted people to remember him not for rumors. Backhand index pointing right, but for greatness. The beginning of This Is It. Then came a huge announcement. Backhand index pointing right, this is it. A comeback concert series in London. Fans around the world exploded with excitement. Tickets sold instantly. The world was ready to see Michael Jackson again. The hidden reality. But behind the scenes, Michael was struggling. Exhausted. Under pressure. Emotionally tired. Yet he kept going. Because performing was the only thing that made him feel truly alive. The final rehearsals. Late at night. Inside a huge rehearsal studio. Michael practiced under bright lights. Dancing. Singing. Perfecting every move. Even when his body looked weak. The final scene of part 4. The music stopped. Everyone around him rested quietly. But Michael remained standing alone on the stage. Sweating. Breathing heavily. Looking into the empty seats in front of him. Thousands of empty chairs waiting for the comeback. Then softly. Almost like a whisper to himself. Michael said. Backhand index pointing right, I just want people to remember the magic. The lights dimmed slowly. And in that silent moment. Backhand index pointing right, the world had no idea how close it was to losing him forever. Long cinematic version. The world was waiting. Waiting for the return of Michael Jackson. Backhand index pointing right, this is it. The comeback that was supposed to shock the world one more time. Fans everywhere were excited. London was ready. The stage was ready. The lights were ready. But behind the scenes. Backhand index pointing right, Michael was exhausted. The pressure becomes too heavy. Every rehearsal demanded perfection. Every movement had to feel magical again. Michael pushed himself harder every single day. Even when his body looked weak. Even when he barely rested. The fear of disappointing the world. Deep inside. Michael feared failure. Because millions of people expected greatness from him. And Michael Jackson had spent his whole life trying to be perfect. The sleepless nights. As rehearsals continued. Michael struggled with sleep. Long nights. Anxiety. Pressure. Sometimes he barely slept at all. And the exhaustion slowly became dangerous. The rehearsal footage. People working with Michael noticed something heartbreaking. Sometimes he looked energetic and excited. Other times. Backhand index pointing right, he looked fragile. Thin. Quiet. Tired. But whenever the music started. Backhand index pointing right, the old magic returned for a moment. The performer inside him. Even during pain. Michael still performed beautifully. Dancing carefully. Singing emotionally. Because performing was part of who he was. Backhand index pointing right, it was the place where he felt most alive. The final rehearsal days. As the concert dates came closer. The pressure became even more intense. Meetings. Schedules. Cameras. Expectations. Everyone wanted something from Michael. But very few asked one important question. Backhand index pointing right, is he okay? The loneliness returns again. Despite being surrounded by staff and dancers. Michael still spent many moments alone. Thinking quietly. Sometimes staring into space. Like someone carrying invisible weight. The final night. Then came the night that changed music history forever. June 25, 2009. The world slept peacefully. Unaware that something terrible was happening. The tragic morning. Suddenly. News exploded everywhere. Television channels interrupted broadcasts. Phones rang non-stop. People froze in shock. Backhand index pointing right, Michael Jackson had died. The world stops. For a moment. It felt impossible. The king of pop. Gone. Millions of fans around the world cried. People gathered outside hospitals. Outside Neverland. Outside his star on Hollywood Boulevard. The world felt heartbroken. The global grief. Radio stations played his music non-stop. Fans held candles in the streets. People who had never met Michael cried like they lost family. Because for decades, backhand index pointing right, Michael's voice had become part of people's lives. The final mystery. Questions filled the media immediately. How did it happen? Why did it happen? Could it have been prevented? The world searched for answers. The sad reality. Behind the fame. Behind the legend. Behind the magic. Backhand index pointing right was a human being who carried enormous pain for many years. The final performance clip. In the days after his death, people watched rehearsal footage from This Is It. And something emotional became clear. Even in exhaustion. Backhand index pointing right, Michael still gave everything he had. The final scene of Part 5. One final rehearsal clip played across television screens worldwide. Michael standing under bright stage lights. Soft music playing. He smiled gently at the dancers around him. Then looked toward the empty arena seats. As if imagining the fans one last time. And quietly said. Backhand index pointing right, let's give them everything we have. Nobody in that room knew. Backhand index pointing right, those would become some of the final days of a legend. Long cinematic version. The world felt quieter after Michael Jackson died. Almost unreal. For decades. His voice had been everywhere. On radios. On television. In stadiums. In people's hearts. And suddenly. Backhand index pointing right, there was silence. The shock around the world. Millions of people struggled to believe the news. Fans cried openly in streets. Candles lit up cities across the world. People gathered outside Neverland Ranch. Outside music stores. Outside his childhood home. Everywhere. Backhand index pointing right, grief felt personal. The music returns again. After his death, Michael's songs returned to the top of music charts. People replayed old performances endlessly. The moonwalk. The voice. The energy. The world remembered the magic again. The emotional realization. Many people suddenly realized something important. Backhand index pointing right, Michael Jackson wasn't just a singer. Backhand index pointing right, he was part of history. The artists he inspired. Countless musicians spoke about his influence. Singers. Dancers. Performers. Entire generations of artists admitted the same thing. Backhand index pointing right, without Michael Jackson, there would be no us. The revolution he created. Michael changed entertainment forever. Music videos became cinematic because of him. Dance performances became bigger because of him. Pop concerts became global spectacles because of him. He didn't just follow the industry. Backhand index pointing right, he transformed it. The humanity people remembered. But fans also remembered something else. Not just the performer. Backhand index pointing right, the human being. The shy smile. The soft voice. The emotional sensitivity. Beneath the fame. Many people saw someone deeply fragile. The complicated legacy. Michael's life remained controversial to some people. Questions and debates continued even after his death. But regardless of opinions, backhand index pointing right, nobody could deny his impact on music and culture. The child who wanted love. At the center of everything. Many people still saw the same lonely child from Indiana. A boy who grew up too fast. A boy who spent his life trying to earn love from the world. The power of his music. Even years later. His songs still connected generations together. Parents introduced his music to children. Young dancers copied his moves online. New artists studied his performances carefully. Because true legends never fully disappear. The immortality he wanted. Years before his death, Michael once said something powerful. Backhand index pointing right, an artist's mission is to touch people forever. And in many ways. Backhand index pointing right, he succeeded. The final reflection. Michael Jackson's life was filled with extremes. Extreme fame. Extreme pressure. Extreme loneliness. Extreme success. He experienced things most people could never imagine. And despite all the pain, backhand index pointing right, he still gave the world unforgettable art. The final scene of Part 6. A little boy stands alone in his room late at night. Music playing softly from an old speaker. He tries to copy the moonwalk. Fails. Then smiles and tries again. On the wall behind him, a poster of Michael Jackson. The camera slowly zooms toward the poster. Toward the legendary silhouette. The hat. The glove. The pose. And softly, Michael's voice echoes one last time. Backhand index pointing right, if you enter this world knowing you are loved, and you leave this world knowing the same, then everything in between can be dealt with. The screen slowly fades to black. But the music continues. Because legends never truly disappear. Long cinematic version. Even after becoming the biggest entertainer in the world, Michael Jackson could not escape pain. Because fame gives people attention. Backhand index pointing right, but not always happiness. The world wanted more. No matter how successful Michael became, the world always demanded something bigger. A bigger album. A bigger concert. A bigger performance. And slowly, backhand index pointing right, the pressure became unbearable. The trap of perfection. Michael believed every performance had to feel magical. Every movement perfect. Every song unforgettable. He rehearsed for endless hours. Sometimes until complete exhaustion. Because he feared one thing deeply. Backhand index pointing right, disappointing people. The emotional weight. Inside, Michael carried emotional scars from childhood. Years of pressure. Years of criticism. Years of loneliness. And those wounds never fully healed. The media obsession. The media followed him constantly. Every rumor became headlines. Every personal struggle became entertainment for the public. Some people admired him. Some mocked him. But almost everyone watched him. The isolation. Michael trusted fewer people over time. The more famous he became, the more isolated he felt. He lived in giant houses. Backhand index pointing right, yet often felt emotionally trapped. The search for escape. To deal with stress and sleepless nights, Michael relied heavily on doctors and medication. The pressure on his mind and body kept growing. Concert rehearsals. Business demands. Public attention. Everything slowly drained him. The public doesn't see everything. Fans saw the performances. The dancing. The music. The magic. But they didn't always see the exhaustion behind the scenes. The fear. The anxiety. The loneliness. The child inside never left. No matter how famous Michael became, part of him remained emotionally fragile. Still searching for comfort. Still searching for acceptance. Still searching for peace. The cost of being a legend. Being Michael Jackson meant living under impossible expectations. People wanted perfection from him constantly. But perfection is something no human can maintain forever. The pain behind the smile. Sometimes Michael smiled in public, while privately feeling broken inside. And that contrast slowly became part of his life. The fans who loved him. Despite everything. Millions of fans stayed loyal to him. They defended him. Supported him. Loved his music deeply. Because for many people, Michael's songs helped them through difficult moments in life. The human behind the icon. It became easy for the world to forget something important. Backhand index pointing right. Michael Jackson was still a human being. Not just a celebrity. Not just a performer. A person with emotions. Fears. Pain. Dreams. The final reflection. Fame made Michael unforgettable. But it also made him vulnerable in ways few people understood. The final scene of Part 7. Late at night. Inside a quiet room. Michael sat alone by a window. The city lights glowing far away. Music playing softly in the background. He looked tired. Thoughtful. Silent. Then slowly whispered. Backhand index pointing right, people see the star. A long pause. Backhand index pointing right, but very few see the person. The camera slowly moves away from the window. Leaving Michael sitting alone in silence. While outside. Backhand index pointing right, the world continued calling him a legend. Long cinematic version. For decades. The world saw Michael Jackson as something larger than life. A superstar. A global icon. A legend. But behind all the fame. Backhand index pointing right, there was still a human being searching for peace. The double life of Michael Jackson. On stage. Michael looked fearless. Powerful. Magical. Millions screamed his name with excitement. But off stage. Backhand index pointing right, he was often quiet and deeply emotional. People who met him privately described him differently. Soft-spoken. Gentle. Shy. Almost fragile. The emotional sensitivity. Michael felt emotions very deeply. Criticism hurt him badly. Rumors affected him. Rejection stayed in his mind for years. Because despite worldwide fame, backhand index pointing right, he still wanted acceptance like everyone else. The burden of fame. Being watched constantly changed him. He became more careful. More isolated. More guarded emotionally. Trust became difficult. Because he never fully knew who truly cared about him. Backhand index pointing right, and who only cared about Michael Jackson the celebrity. The love for children. One thing many people noticed about Michael was his connection with children. He often said children represented innocence and honesty. Qualities he felt adults had lost. Many people believed this came from his own lost childhood. The childhood fame had taken away from him. The need to create magic. Michael constantly tried to create wonder for others. Through music. Through dance. Through fantasy. Because making people happy gave him temporary peace. The internal battle. But no matter how much success he achieved, the emotional emptiness sometimes remained. The pressure. The loneliness. The fear of judgment. All continued following him. The public versus the private person. The world often saw headlines and controversy. But people close to Michael sometimes saw someone exhausted by fame. A man carrying emotional pain quietly. Trying to keep smiling for the world. The desire to be remembered. Michael deeply wanted one thing. Backhand index pointing right, to leave something meaningful behind. Not just hit songs. Not just records. But emotion. Connection. Inspiration. The impact on millions. And in many ways. He succeeded. Around the world. People connected emotionally to his music. His songs crossed language barriers. His performances inspired generations. The legacy beyond music. Michael became more than entertainment. Backhand index pointing right, he became part of global culture. His style. His dance moves. His voice. His image. Even decades later. People instantly recognized him. The human truth. But perhaps the saddest truth about Michael Jackson was this. Backhand index pointing right, the world loved the legend. While the man behind the legend often felt misunderstood. The final scene of Part 8. Late one evening. Michael walked alone through Neverland Ranch. The amusement ride silent. The lights glowing softly. He stopped and looked up at the night sky. For a moment. He looked peaceful. Then quietly whispered. Backhand index pointing right, I just wanted to make people happy. The wind moved gently through the trees. And the camera slowly pulled away. Leaving behind not just a superstar. Backhand index pointing right, but a lonely human being the world never fully understood. The world still could not believe it. Days after Michael Jackson's death. People everywhere remained in shock. Television channels replayed his performances non-stop. Radio stations filled the air with his music. Fans cried openly in streets across the world. Because it didn't feel like just a celebrity had died. Backhand index pointing right, it felt like an era had ended. The global mourning. From America to Europe. From Asia to the Middle East. Millions mourned together. Candles lit up city streets. Fans gathered outside memorials. People danced to his songs while crying at the same time. Because Michael's music had become part of people's lives. The public memorial. Then came one of the most emotional moments in music history. Backhand index pointing right, Michael Jackson's memorial service. The world watched together. Family members. Friends. Artists. Fans. All gathered to say goodbye. The emotional speeches. Many people spoke through tears. Some talked about his kindness. Some talked about his genius. Others spoke about the pressure he carried for most of his life. The saddest moment. Then came the moment that broke millions of hearts. Michael's young daughter, Paris Jackson, stepped forward. Nervous. Emotional. Trying to stay strong. And softly said. Backhand index pointing right, ever since I was born. Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine. Her voice cracked. Tears filled her eyes. Then she whispered. Backhand index pointing right, I just want to say. I love him so much. The audience broke into tears. Around the world. Millions cried watching that moment. Because suddenly. Backhand index pointing right, Michael Jackson was no longer just a superstar. Backhand index pointing right, he was a father. A human being. Someone deeply loved by his family. The final goodbye. As music played softly. Images of Michael's life appeared on giant screens. The little boy from Indiana. The Jackson 5. The moonwalk. The sold-out concerts. The legendary performances. An entire lifetime of history. The realization. People finally understood something powerful. Michael Jackson's life was extraordinary. But also deeply tragic. He gave joy to billions of people. While privately struggling with loneliness and pressure. The fans refused to forget. Even after his death. Fans continued honoring him everywhere. Murals appeared across cities. Tribute performances filled arenas. Young dancers copied his moves online. Because legends don't disappear easily. The last performance lives forever. Clips from his concerts continued inspiring new generations. The energy. The creativity. The emotion. Backhand index pointing right, it still felt magical. The final reflection. Michael once said. Backhand index pointing right, the greatest education in the world is watching the masters at work. And through music, dance, and performance. Backhand index pointing right, he became one of those masters. The final scene of Part 9. A huge crowd stands outside a concert arena at night. People holding candles quietly. One of Michael's songs plays softly in the background. Fans from different countries stand together in silence. Some crying. Some smiling through tears. Then the camera slowly rises toward the night sky. And Michael's voice echoes softly one final time. Backhand index pointing right, I love you all. The music fades slowly. But the feeling remains. Because some artists become bigger than music itself. The final goodbye. As music played softly, images of Michael's life appeared on giant screens. The little boy from Indiana. The Jackson 5. The moonwalk. The sold-out concerts. The legendary performances. An entire lifetime of history. The realization. People finally understood something powerful. Michael Jackson's life was extraordinary. But also deeply tragic. He gave joy to billions of people, while privately struggling with loneliness and pressure. The fans refused to forget. Even after his death, fans continued honoring him everywhere. Murals appeared across cities. Tribute performances filled arenas. Young dancers copied his moves online. Because legends don't disappear easily. The last performance lives forever. Clips from his concerts continued inspiring new generations. The energy. The creativity. The emotion. Backhand index pointing right, it still felt magical. The final reflection. Michael once said. Backhand index pointing right, the greatest education in the world is watching the masters at work. And through music, dance, and performance. Backhand index pointing right, he became one of those masters. The final scene of Part 9. A huge crowd stands outside a concert arena at night. People holding candles quietly. One of Michael's songs plays softly in the background. Fans from different countries stand together in silence. Some crying. Some smiling through tears. Then the camera slowly rises toward the night sky. And Michael's voice echoes softly one final time. Backhand index pointing right, I love you all. The music fades slowly. But the feeling remains. Because some artists become bigger than music itself. Years passed after Michael Jackson's death. But something strange happened. Backhand index pointing right, the world never stopped talking about him. New artists appeared. New music trends came and went. But Michael Jackson's name, backhand index pointing right, never disappeared. The music lives on. Children born years after his death still dance to his songs. Teenagers discovered his performances online. Old fans replayed memories from concerts they never forgot. Because Michael's music carried something timeless. Emotion. Energy. Magic. The Internet era. As social media grew, a new generation discovered him again. Videos of the moonwalk went viral. Concert clips shocked millions. Reaction videos filled the internet. People who had never seen Michael perform live suddenly understood something. Backhand index pointing right, he was different. The power of performance. Many artists could sing. Many artists could dance. But Michael Jackson did something rare. Backhand index pointing right, he made people feel emotion through performance. One movement. One look. One note. And entire stadiums exploded with energy. The legacy beyond fame. Michael's influence spread far beyond music. Fashion. Dance. Music videos. Stage production. Pop culture itself. He changed the entertainment world forever. The human story people remember. But over time, people also remembered the emotional side of his story. The child star who lost his childhood. The man crushed by pressure. The lonely person behind global fame. And many people began seeing him differently. Not just as a superstar. Backhand index pointing right, but as a deeply human figure. The search for love. Perhaps the saddest part of Michael's story was this. Even after becoming the most famous entertainer on earth. Backhand index pointing right, he still searched for peace and acceptance. The legacy of inspiration. Yet despite all the struggles, Michael inspired millions to dream bigger. Young dancers practiced harder because of him. Young singers found courage because of him. Artists everywhere studied his dedication and creativity. Because greatness leaves marks on history. The final truth. Legends don't become immortal because they are perfect. Backhand index pointing right, they become immortal because they leave emotion behind. And Michael Jackson left emotion in every performance. The last scene. A small stage inside a school auditorium. A little boy stands nervously in front of a crowd. Music begins playing softly. Backhand index pointing right, Billie Jean. The boy takes a deep breath. Then attempts the moonwalk. The audience cheers instantly. The child smiles proudly. And for one brief moment. Backhand index pointing right, the magic lives again. The final narration. The camera slowly fades through old images of Michael's life. The child star. The performer. The legend. The lonely man. The king of pop. And one final sentence appears on screen. Backhand index pointing right, some people entertain the world. But only a few change it forever. Silence. Then softly. Very softly. Michael Jackson's voice echoes one last time. Backhand index pointing right, keep the faith. Screen fades to black. But the music never truly ends.